This is Randy. Welcome to my channel. We're going to be talking about you can't outrun God. A lot of people try to outrun God, but you can't do it. If you will please hit the subscribe button. If you give it a thumbs up, click like. If you want to make a comment, I'll get back to you as quick as I can. It would really help push the channel out to other people. I need your help. We're going to move on with You Can't Outrun God. Jonah chapter 1 verse 1, and then we're going to be reading chapter 3 and verse 1. Now the word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go to Nineveh, the great city, proclaim to it the proclamation which I am going to tell you. The Lord had not told him yet what he wanted him to say, but the first thing the Lord wanted him to do was go to Nineveh. You need to get there, and then I'm going to tell you what to say. God told Jonah to go to Nineveh, but he didn't want to go. He wanted to go to Tarshish. And when God speaks to you, you need to listen to the word of the Lord. And do not act like a child and you don't like what you hear, so you're going to stomp your feet or you're going to go somewhere else. You can't do that to God. You have to follow the voice of the Lord. When our kids were young, sometimes they wouldn't do their chores. And mom would say, they didn't done their chores. So then we would tell them, you're not going nowhere Friday night. You're not going out after the football game at school till you clean your room or till you take the trash out, whatever the task may be. That we had to do that because they didn't want to do and they didn't like to hear what we told them that they needed to do. And this is what Jonah did to God. He didn't like what he heard. And so what happened to him? Well, God let Jonah have a belly ride and a great fish because he didn't want to listen to God. He didn't want to go where God wanted him to go. And he wanted to get away from God's presence. But I'm going to tell you something right now, if you don't know it. You cannot outrun God. You cannot run away from God's presence, all right? Chapter 3, verse 1, But Jonah rose up to flee Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. So he went down to Joppa and found a ship which was going to Tarshish. He paid the fare, went down into the ship, and fled to Tarshish from the presence of the Lord. And folks, you got to understand, you can't outrun God. I've had people tell me over the years, I'm moving away from this city where nobody knows me, nobody knows who I am, I'm going to start fresh somewhere else, and I won't have to contend with church people and my family putting pressure on me and all that. And they move to a different state. Guess what? God's in that different state. No matter where you move, God's there. You can run to another country, but God's there. You move to another state, but God's there. You get in a spaceship if you work for the government, fly up in outer space and land on the moon. Guess what? God's still there. You can go into the depths of the sea. God's still there. Let me give you a clue. You cannot outrun God. And you shouldn't want to do the opposite of thing what God tells you to do. So we need to know that God is doing this for the best interest of the people. He wanted him to go and witness to the people, but he did not want to go to Nineveh and do it. You need to do what God wants you to do. God has a plan for your life, but it's up to you if you're going to live that plan or not, or if you're going to listen to the Lord or not. Many times I wanted to do things and I prayed and asked the Lord, and I never got nothing in my spirit that told me I should do it. So I didn't do it because I figured, I don't feel comfortable about this. If I don't feel comfortable about it, I'm not going to do it because I need to listen to the voice of the Lord, and you need to do what God wants you to do. You can be like Jonah and try to run from God, or you can meet up with somebody somewhere and think you can be at peace and run your own life, but because of what you're doing and where you're running, you can run away from God and try, but he's there. And he's still going to be dealing with you in your spirit. But a lot of people just don't like to hear. I preached a sermon one time. People don't always like to hear what God has to say. God doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. All right? That's why, because he's truthful. He tells the truth, and I had a guy one time come into church. He had a real bright suit on. I don't even remember the color. It was real bright, like a neon. And he had a vest, a coat, and pants, and white shoes, and a white belt and everything. And he said, what do you think of my new suit? Well, to me, It looked hideous. I wouldn't be wearing nothing like that, but that's me. So I said to him, well, how do you like your new suit? He goes, I love it. I think it looks sharp. I said, well, great. I'm glad you got it. All right. I didn't lie to him. I didn't tell him I hate it. But I told him, the only person that had to like that suit's the guy that's wearing it. All right. If nobody else likes it, that's between him and his friends. But I never got involved in stuff like that. I'd always told him, well, but if you love it and that's what you got, I'm happy for you. You need to do what God wants you to do. God does not tell you what you want to hear all the time. Many times we don't want to do what God wants us to do. But Jonah found out no matter where you go, no matter where you run, no matter what you do, God is there. He wound up going to Nineveh, but it took a belly ride for 3 days in the belly of a fish. Then he got puked up on the shore. I mean, he really went through a lot of problems there to wind up at the same place where God wanted him to go, Nineveh. It had been just easier on him, saved him the belly ride, saved him the throwing up, saved him the guilt he was feeling because he wouldn't listen to the Lord and he thought he could outrun the Lord. And when he was in that ship, they had a great storm. And long story short, he told the guys, the only way you're going to be saved, you got to throw me out of the ship. They didn't want to do it. They still rowed, tried to control it. They couldn't. They finally threw him in the sea, and the sea became calm. Then he got swallowed by a great fish. But I tell you what, I don't want no belly rides. Do you want belly rides? I don't. I want God to be able, when he speaks to me, I want to hear what God has to say. And I want God to know that I'm going to follow his command and do what he wants me to do. When God speaks in your spirit, you need to listen to God, but he doesn't always tell you what you want to hear. All right? So you cannot outrun God. It's impossible.